Hey everyone, this is George from the Present Fathers Podcast. Wanted to put out a quick disclaimer for this episode. It is a very controversial topic. It's a very hot topic in culture today, and we wanted to address it in a way that was productive and made our position clear. And we just also wanted to call out that our position on this issue is that we feel trans athletes who were former men, now women, do not have a right to compete in women's sports because it is an unfair advantage that they have. That is our position. Our guest has his own beliefs and his positions as well, and he said some things that, although we agree with the same argument about their right to compete in sports, the way that he said them, we don't agree with. So our guests from time to time may have differing opinions, may say things that we don't necessarily agree with. So we're just putting out that disclaimer that our guest has his feelings and he stands by them, and we will stand by ours. And hopefully you can kind of look past anything in this episode and see the spirit of the thing and where our position is on this matter. And so we thank you for listening and supporting us, and hope that you find this episode helpful. Welcome to the Present Fathers Podcast. This is the show that focuses on climbing the mountain of fatherhood together. We believe that dads matter. That's why this show is for you. So gear up, dads. Get ready. It's time to start climbing. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another episode of the Present Fathers Podcast. Tonight, we are joined by John Peterson. I will let him introduce himself, but he has a long list of accolades, one such being that he was a professional golfer and recently has been very prominent on the Twitter space with some very interesting conversations he's had. And we're going to talk about something tonight that, trigger warning here. This is going to be a hot topic, mainly about transgender athletes, male to female, competing in professional sports. And so John is going to first introduce himself, talk about his family, his background, and we're going to get into some spicy conversation tonight. So if you have a weak constitution when it comes to some debate, then tune out now. Otherwise, we're going to get right into it. So, John, why don't you tell us a little bit about your background and how you got to where you are today, brother?
Yeah, I love that warning. I should probably do that before I get on anything. When we do ours, we don't warn anyone about anything. They get halfway through it and they hate it, so they just turn it off. But I like that. There, people that hate it are already gone. So perfect. I grew up in Fort Worth, Texas, still live here, been here forever. Spent 7 years in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, went to LSU, then stayed another 2 years just because I was having such a great time in my early 20s. Turned pro, started playing golf on the PGA Tour in 2012. Almost won the U.S. Open that year. And that got me on the PGA Tour full-time the next year. Spent 6 years on tour, ended in 2019 when I had surgery on both wrists. So between 2012 and 2019, I got married in 16. So Amanda got to see me play a couple of years. We've had 4 kids since then. We'll be 7 years married in December. We have 4 kids. I've got a 5-year-old, a 4-year-old, a 2-year-old, and a 9-month-old. So they are all over the place. Man. As we're speaking, she's doing bedtime right now. And I told these guys earlier, I'm not envious of her, so I'm happy to be on the show. But that is a quick synopsis of the last 10 years for me. I do not think my golf career is why I'm on this podcast. What I think is we're going to get into some extremely spicy conversation, which ultimately I'm better at than golf.
Not a bad skill to have, but we're thrilled to have you,
sir.
Yeah. Well, the real reason is you're a dad, and obviously 4 times over there. So good luck to you both with so 4 under 5 or 5 and under.
Yeah,
keeping you busy.
For me.
Yeah, we're right now we're praying for your wife as she's fending off the fire team out there.
You left her in the trenches taking grenades.
You're comfortably in the office right now, so we'll.
The thing is, I got this office, all right, and my desk sits and looks out. I've got doors that close, but they're glass. So I'm just watching. I'm watching the World War unfold as I'm sitting here on your podcast in front of me. So I might be getting flipped off here in a second.
Eye daggers. Yeah.
Yeah. Every
Well,
day.
we want to say thanks to your wife for buying us some time here so we can do this. But I guess anything else about your background you want to dive into, or you just want to get right to it in terms of the conversation?
There's just nothing that much more important about me, I guess. I am a pilot. You said you want to
Yeah.
talk about that. I'm a new pilot. I'm a very amateur pilot. All right. My wife still hadn't flown with me. I've been a pilot about 15 months. And my birthday's next week, and that's all I wanted. I was like, all you got to do is come up and play with me. And she's going to come up next week. But
What do you fly, if you don't mind me asking?
yeah, I've got a Piper Saratoga. It's a 6-seater single engine. Pretty basic. It's what you train on, is a 4-seater. Usually they're Warriors or Cherokees, something like that, or Cessna 172, something like that. That's what most people train on. And then when you get your private pilot license or your instrument rating or whatever you decide to buy an airplane, you usually go one step up. If you're smart, you don't want to have too much airplane too fast. So I went, to a Saratoga, which is basically a bigger trainer. More capable, but it flies similar to what I was working on.
Cool, man.
Nice. That's amazing.
Awesome. Well, so let's reference the kind of initial conversation that has made you a little bit more popular than you used to be all of 6 weeks ago.
I guess so. Yeah.
Yeah. Twitter kind of exploded with that one. Yeah. So why don't you just kind of give us a little background for those who may not be really aware of that whole altercation, so to speak, that the exchange is a better word.
Yeah, sure. I kind of you gotta remember that Twitter is not real life.
Exactly.
Right? Twitter's not real life, for one. And then you got to remember that only 2% of the world has Twitter. Okay. And of those 2%, like 0.5% are active. So you're talking about a very small percentage of people that are using this app. But when you get on it, then you see 30,000 likes on some tweet, you're like, oh my God, everybody's using it. No, that's not the case. All right. Let's just put that out there first. So what you're talking about is a college golfer whose name was Scott Davidson. He played at Davidson College, or no, it wasn't. That's his last name. He played at Charlotte. He played at Charlotte from 2013 to 16. And I've just done a little bit of research because I had to get one or two facts when I was debating this guy. So, sorry, girl, whatever he is. I don't know. It doesn't matter. Scott was a man playing college golf at Charlotte, did not have much success, never won a golf tournament. He played top 5 here and there. And by top 5, I mean he started. Okay. So if you're not familiar with college golf, there's 5 guys that play a tournament. They count 4 scores. Okay. So he played number 3 or 4 for the most part in his college career. Then he turned pro. And anybody would have told him, anybody with any experience as a professional would have said, you have a long road ahead of you with that kind of pedigree coming out. I mean, the scoring average is in the mid 70s. There is not a pro golfer on earth that has ever made any money with a scoring average over 72. Sorry, it just doesn't happen. So he comes out of college and, not surprisingly, has no success as a professional golfer. I think his career earnings were in the like $120 range. I mean, nothing. So he decides to have a sex change. Okay. Decides to chop his pecker off and play against the women if he wanted to. All right. And I have no problem. I really don't care. Like if someone wants to chop their pecker off and pretend they're a girl the rest of their life, I don't care. Like if you want to run around in a ballet suit and do tutus and do gymnastics your whole life.
You do you, boo,
Go ahead.
Yep.
That's fine. But the minute that you step into the arena with actual women pretending that you're on the same level as them as a man, then we got a serious problem. So anyway, I went on this. She finished second in this women's pro event. Okay. And it was the first event he played. Okay. We're talking about a guy that couldn't crack an egg as a pro male. First event, second, makes, a couple grand. Like 10x his lifetime earnings in his first event. And so an account that's very popular in the golf world, Monday Q Info, tweeted the result. And I would have never found it if he hadn't have tweeted it out. Now, his name is Ryan French. He's He does an excellent job of covering mini tours and small time professional golf. So I commented. I just said, thank God it lost, because he finished second. So one actual female beat this guy. And then it took about 4 hours, and I guess he saw it and then replied to me underneath. And I don't remember what he said, but we went back and forth. There was 7 or 8 exchanges each. And I basically just slammed the door with a picture of my family and all 6 of us, in our Christmas card. And I said, look, man, this is what I come home to. Like, I feel joy around my family constantly because of these children. And I don't want your joy to be coming from beating biological women. If my kids have to play against you or anyone like you in 15 years, I'm going to be in prison for life. Like, there's going to be people wanting me dead. Like, it's just, it's a serious problem. We talked about it earlier before we got on, but left is right is wrong, and up is down and down is up. Like, everything seems backwards right now. But that was basically, in a nutshell, the exchange between me, and her name is now Haley Davidson.
Gotcha.
I would have said that was an exchange. I would have said that was a massacre with the responses you had. They were pretty amazing.
Yeah.
They weren't bad. I can't remember what I said. I had about 3 or 4 bourbons before I got into that with
Sweet Baton Rouge.
So you definitely had your thinking cap on. But yeah, so that's a nice segue into what really the core issue is here, right? It's not, we're not here to debate whether or not it's right for someone to become trans and do that. Like, that's a personal choice, whatever. That's a topic for a probably very separate forum than what we're going to get into tonight. I don't think that's really relevant to our show. What we wanted to focus on is the issue about professional sports. And it seems like there is I think it's a very vocal minority, but it just seems bigger than they are, that think it's such a great thing and it's progressive and that it's fair. And that's really the biggest thing, is it's robbing women of a level playing field of competing against other women. And so that kind of is where we wanted to hone in on tonight and just kind of kick it around. And several of us are dads who have daughters, and the future where it's going right now is a bleak one when it comes to sports, right? For our daughters to have to compete, and for those today having to, I think Justin brought it up before we went live, was you work your whole life to be the best at your craft, and then, a guy decides to become a woman, and boom, now, he's got this humongous advantage over you because he was a man for 20 plus years. So Dustin, you kind of dug into the some of the studies, right? And
I'd love to hear
hint at some of what you found from a research point of view.
Yeah, it's actually pretty well researched. And when you look at it, I mean, there's 25, 30 different sports organizations that are allowing biological males to compete as women. So, it's not like it's this fringe idea. More and more, whether it's golf or swimming or MMA, weightlifting, there are all these sports organizations are saying that if a biological male has taken a year of estrogen, and some organizations are different. Some want to see a surgical change, some don't care. So like the whole reason Leah Thomas just had that issue a little while ago, the swimmer, was because he still had male genitalia at the time that he was in a woman's locker room. And so he was competing against female swimmers, was in their locker room, stripping down naked, saw them naked, and they felt uncomfortable because they didn't know, that they would have a biological male in the locker room with them. So there's other issues aside from just the competitive element, in that, you don't have to, you have to consent to these kinds of things. But, even Joe Rogan said in a recent podcast that if the female competitor knows that their opponent was a former male.
Well, he's talking specifically in MMA.
Yeah, exactly.
Trying to organize a fight.
Yeah, that would be okay. And so, all of these organizations are kind of cohesing on this idea that it's okay for biological males who have transitioned and have low enough testosterone levels to compete with women. So, it's not more popular. I think all the polls show that, people throughout the world don't believe that biological males should compete in women's sports. But nevertheless, all these organizations, International Olympic Committee, LPGA was actually one of the first. It was a watershed moment, was your sport, golf. where in 2010, was it Lawless? Something, not Lucy Lawless, the actress, was one of the first competitors that was a male.
Lana Lawless.
Lana Lawless, yeah, exactly. In
Is that right?
2010, successfully. So she had a lawsuit against the LPGA, said that I should be able to compete, and then she didn't have to win the lawsuit. They just said, drop it, we're going to let you play. They let her jump right in. So, all these organizations are saying that this is okay under certain conditions. So it seems odd at the face of it. We're all athletes. We understand that, I've been through puberty. I'm 6'4", 220 pounds. If today, as a 40-year-old man, I transitioned, took all the estrogen, I would still be a 6'4", former man who went through male puberty. And so that is where the challenge is. But again, you have multiple scientific studies throughout the world, England, America, all these places that are, according to their research, showing that biological males, as long as they've taken the hormones, do not have a competitive advantage against women in these sports. And there's 28 titles that are held right now by biological men. So it's not like these trans athletes are just jumping in and just smashing everything, right? I mean, there are women that can hold their own against these athletes. So that's that's kind of the other side of the coin.
But should they have to? John, what do you think?
Dude, I think this whole conversation is so ridiculous. Like, just listening to this and the conversations, the stuff I see on Twitter and online, like it's like the COVID thing. Like, it was interesting for like 6 to 10 months, and then everybody was just so sick of that shit that just didn't care anymore. Like, I'm to the point now where, like, it's only been, when was that? Then I tweeted that probably like 3 or 4 weeks ago. Like, but I've done 4, 5, 6 podcasts where people wanted me to come on and just explain, my perspective on this stuff. And I'm getting tired of it, dude. I'm getting so sick of talking about transgender athletes and men playing against women. Like, it's never happened before. Everybody knows that the men have an advantage. Like, if you have half a brain cell left, that. Like, estrogen for a year?
Yep.
Come on. Like, you're 6'4", 240 pounds. You take estrogen for a year, you could probably play in the WNBA and be the #1 lead scorer in the entire thing. Like, it's ridiculous.
That's potential. Yeah.
Dustin, you have a new career ahead of you now.
And here's the other thing. Here's the question that nobody's asking.
Kobe.
Who funds these tests?
Right.
Who
the
are
studies,
getting the results? Yes.
Yeah.
Because
as we've seen in the last couple of years, money would never possibly change the outcome of a scientific study.
Yeah.
Here, so on the realm of science, I have another fly in the ointment here. So that did not zoom in very good. Hang on, let me see if I can share that better.
What is this?
This is the Army's combat fitness test scale. I don't know why it's showing it so like small. It should be blown up, but let me just zoom in. Is that better? There we go. So on the grading scale here, right? So, people are going to say, trust the science. Well, initially, this test was going to have no age bracket and no gender. It was just one score. Well, without going into too much detail, they had to change the test. I'll let you figure out why. So it's back to having a male and female scale, and it now also has age brackets. But look at the disparity here between. So I'm 34. I have to do a 340-pound deadlift 3 times to get 100 points, and a female only has to do 230 pounds. And then on the run, if you come down to the bottom, I have to run a 1342. They have to run a 1518. So if the Army's saying there's difference between men and women, then why is it somehow in sports this difference magically disappears and you're going to say that they're the same competitor, right? So this is the new test that everyone in the Army has to do. So I did mine in October. I'll have to do it again. I'm in the Guard. We only do it every now and then. But that's an interesting kind of the same crowd that wants to say science, science, science. Well, now here you have the U.S. military saying from a scientific point of view, because this is all based off of studies they spent millions and millions of dollars on. So, you can't have it both ways. What is it? Are men different or are they not? So that was just kind of an example that to your point, John, highlights how ludicrous this entire point is. And so I guess maybe where we can take this too is like, as dads, you know, is it just talking about it like this? Like, what do we do? Because quite frankly, my daughter's 7 now. She's starting to do more athletics, sports, things like that. I don't know if she'll ever be super competitive at something, but if she wants to be, I don't want to have to worry about, you know, one day Timmy is now Sally and runs twice as fast as her or whatever, right? Which is a very real thing. So I guess where do we go from here, right? Like, let's have that discussion, since apparently people don't want to.
Yeah, I think you've got to have a league for the trannies. Like, you want to go have your own league, go for it. Like, nobody cares if you compete against each other. That's not an advantage. Like, go ahead, do that. Like, men, women, trannies, done. You know, but the problem is there's only 5 of them in the country. So, like, the league's not big enough to give them any merit to beat anyone.
That's
like,
a great point.
There's just not enough transgender athletes in any sports to have a league. So they got to play against normal people. And there's your problem, right? Because how do we fit everybody's cup of tea in?
Well, that's the problem is everyone is pandering to 1% of the population and alienating the rest. And if you stop and think about it, another thing that not a lot of people are talking about is, what do females take to become men? Testosterone. And why did they do that? Because it makes them more like a man. And why would they want to be a man? Because they're more masculine. They're stronger. They're faster. They're capable of more physically. That's exactly why a female would ever take testosterone, especially, you know, the female bodybuilders who are trying to compete with men. There's 0 chance ever unless they're taking testosterone or steroids or both. I mean, that's just a fact. And you want to talk science, that is 100% real. And it's not something that anyone's ever going to talk about, which is what's so sad, is that testosterone literally is what divides us from females. It's literally what makes us males. And science says we are literally different because of that. That's it. Our hormones, technically.
Well, it's more than that. It's also male puberty, right? I mean, if you go through male puberty, you can have a 0 testosterone level and you'll still have a different body type than a woman, right? Because by your argument, I could take a bunch of estrogen, get all the testosterone out of my system, and I wouldn't have a competitive advantage. So my suspicion is, and I'm prognosticating a little bit here going into the future, I think that the argument, once all the scientific studies come out over the next couple of years showing that men clearly who have gone through a male puberty have a physical advantage. I think it's undeniable, because you are seeing more and more studies coming out showing that, yes, even with lower testosterone levels, biological males defeat biological females in sports most of the time. I think the next argument will be, it doesn't matter because we have to affirm trans people's gender. And so that takes precedent over fair competition in sports. And I think that'll be the next argument, probably 2024, 2025.
Right, but the fallacy in that argument then is, so you're going to honor this person, you're going to sacrifice this other more people, actually.
Yeah.
Right.
But I think in the hierarchy of wokeness of like who is like, I think trans people get to go over the top of women currently. I mean, that just seems to be the political climate right now.
Right. But that's what I'm saying. So as fathers who have daughters, right, we're raising daughters in a world now where they are now a second class individual to someone who wants to go through transgender surgery and all that kind of stuff and hormone therapy. To me, that is unacceptable. That's an absolute line in the sand for me. This is this is the opposite. Every feminist should be screaming, right? Because they fought for how many hundreds of years to have women, in a more prominent role. And here now it's like a guy decides he wants to be a chick, and it undoes centuries of your progress.
Yeah, so you reminded me. Sorry,
go ahead.
On you.
No, you're good, brother. Go ahead.
You reminded me of a reply that I got to my tweet. It was a lady. Her name was Lisa Cornwell. She used to work at the Golf Channel, and she's a feminist. I mean, she is, and that's fine. Go ahead, be your feminist, whatever. But you should be pulling for me. Like, she was mad at me. Like she was on the transgender side, and it made 0 sense to me. Because I'm pulling for the women here. Like, exactly. I am the biggest fan of the women in this entire conversation. And she was coming after me like I wanted to kill all the women in the world. but I think these people are so skewed in their brain that they're classifying this dude as the number one woman. Like, if you're a man and then you turn to be a woman, like you said, it's almost like they're celebrated as the face of feminism.
Right.
It's not the case. And so I had a little back and forth with her too. And she, of course, she didn't reply after my second answer, but that was so shocking to me, that a feminist would be. She called me an asshole, like all this stuff, and I'm just like, look, I am championing women here. Like, I am. If no one's going to pull for the women, the men better. If the women won't pull for each other, then the men better, because then there's no one left, right?
Well, and it's strange too, because even women who are like either current or former, prominent female athletes in each of their different sports, who are trying to speak out against like what's really going on and how unfair it is, they're being like crucified publicly, character assassination essentially, just across the board. Like, there's some horrible women, trying to trample on women's rights. It's like, they should be the face of feminism. And it's baffling to me as a man, because it's like the people who seem like you said should be on the same team are somehow attacking each other too. And so I mean, it's loony where we are right now. But yeah, Dustin, you have a really good point about Caitlyn Jenner. Surprisingly.
Right. So Caitlyn Jenner, the former track athlete Bruce Jenner, yesterday, the day before, I don't know if you've seen this, John, formed a PAC to raise money to keep former male athletes out of women's sports. So the most prominent trans person probably in the world has now made it her mission. And in sports, yeah, exactly. It's made it her mission to stop this. Right. It's called the Fairness First Pact. And it's interesting because, of course, she's been crucified as, yes, you're trans, and yes, you were the face of this movement for years, but now you slightly disagree with us on this one issue, so now we're going to pillory you. And so it's really interesting seeing, even Caitlyn Jenner, right, who a couple of years ago was the darling of the woke left, is now not. You can never be woke enough, I guess, is the issue.
Yeah,
well, I think you understand it, because I can understand that, because he was the best in the world. Like, he was at the pinnacle of men's sports at one point. And so he knows, because he's been there, how much of an advantage it would have been for him to race against women. Like, so he knows that's just blatantly unfair. And it sounds as if, he's fine, or she's fine. Caitlyn Jenner's fine with being a transgender person. He's just doesn't want them in sports. And that's what we've said from day one. Like, we don't care. Just go ahead and just don't play against women. And it sounds like, since he's been at the best in the world, he understands what an advantage it would be if he was running against women. I mean, he would have won by 25 yards, in some of those races.
It kind of, it raises really what happens is this, all the wokeness, the woke culture, right? They demand. And no matter how much you give them, it's never enough, right? And so even, Caitlyn Jenner, who is like the poster child for all of these, woke ideologies, and didn't like Time or something give her the, like, I don't know, Woman of the Year or something like that? Wasn't there some huge, feminine accolades were thrown on Caitlyn Jenner? I can't remember specifically which one, but again, it's like, even he was a beneficiary of this, where like, swapped over to female and now won Woman of the Year or something like that. And now they're like coming after him. So it's, I think that's really where, in our own homes as fathers, that's where we draw the line initially, right? Is you don't bow down. So like, you spoke out against it, that like we all need to do that, no matter how much ridicule there may be, because we're in a time where, just being silent and trying to be nice or whatever, that doesn't work. The woke people, totally convinced by this ideology, it'll never be enough. There's no appeasing them. So, and now they're eating their own.
Yeah, well, they're starting to, but I want to actually rebuttal something Dustin said. He said you have to go through male puberty. That is absolute BS. So I'm actually reading a study right now that says the musculoskeletal system is made up of our bones and our muscles. Males have larger and stronger bones than females at birth. This is predetermined in utero by the basic male embryo, which produces testosterone. We are more resistant to trauma, and we have stronger muscle fibers from birth. So you're going to tell me that you have to go through puberty? That's BS. That's an excuse. And I'm telling you right now, it comes down to the chromosomes. When you're in utero, there's a reason they can literally, this is something I work with every day and I sell. We have tests that can literally tell you from a few weeks out if you have a male or a female. The reason why is they can look at your chromosomes, they can look at your blood and your DNA, and they can tell immediately based off of, what your sex is, where you're going to be. That being said, you don't think they don't know the science behind how strong a female is versus a male, or a male versus female in certain aspects? I'm telling you right now, genetically and in the system we just spoke about, males are superior, 100%. We have stronger bones, we have heavier bones and bodies, we have stronger muscle fibers, longer muscle fibers, and we tend to be larger as humans. I mean, it's like, for instance, if I had a daughter and I had a son, and my son is 15 pounds, let's say, and my daughter is 16, but my son has more muscle and my daughter is heavier, who you think is going to smoke who? Come on, let's be real here. I mean, at the end of the day, you're
canceled.
I don't care. Whatever. Cancel me. I'm just saying, science, people want to scream science, but they're not actually looking at science.
Right. They want it both ways.
Can you imagine what our great grandfathers would say in the Great Depression if they were sitting in this room and having this conversation?
They'd probably shoot us.
Absolutely. This is the dumbest thing I've ever talked about for weeks at a time in my life. I'm so sick.
Yeah, it's really dumb. Brandon, you've been very silent over there, soaking it all in, Mr. Philosopher. What you got for us tonight?
Well, I just think that this whole issue is an ideology issue, because everybody's being forced by companies and sponsors of all these places to either get on board or they get crucified. I mean, could you literally imagine if, let's say, this ideology was Christianity? We forced you to wear shirts that say "I love Jesus" or supports Jesus. And we told people that they had to act a certain way morally, based on a Christian standard in public, or you'd be crucified. Like, seriously, it's the ideology that's the issue. But for me personally, I just, the way I look at it is, a male in female sports is just like somebody who's doping in baseball. When you're taking testosterone, you get banned. It should be the same thing. Males should not be in females, and I'll just leave it at that. But I actually had a question for you. What other than golf, are there any other favorite sports that you have, and are there anything specifically that you want to see your kids playing in the future?
Yeah, I was a guy that played pretty much everything growing up and didn't really have a favorite sport until my dad sat me down in 9th grade. And I was playing everything at the time and loving them all. And, at that point, I mean, y'all are the same age. I mean, we had to be drug inside when it was time to go to bed. And now I gotta force my kids to go outside. It's flipped 180 on us. But we were outside all day. I was playing everything. And then one day my dad, he called me in, and my dad was a really good athlete back in the day. And what he always told me was he was good at everything, but he wasn't great at one thing. And so he wanted me to be great at one thing. He wanted me to pick something. Didn't matter what it was, but, put your heart and soul into it, like you're putting half of your heart and soul into everything else. And so at that point, I was pretty good at baseball. I was pretty good at football. I was pretty good at track. I was better than pretty good at golf. And, I'm white. I'm 5'11". I'm not probably going to play college football. I didn't punt, so I had really no chance there.
No place kicking either.
No long snap.
Gotta have those strong legs.
I wanted to go to LSU, and there ain't no way I'm playing anything but golf at LSU.
That's funny.
So I picked golf, and that's what he wanted me to do. He didn't care which one I picked. He just wanted me to pick one. And so I did. I chose golf and solely played golf through high school, and got lucky and got a scholarship to play at LSU, and then got a little better and played as a pro. And now I just talk about trainees.
That's not why we asked you on here, but
Yeah.
you actually brought up a good point, and it made me think of something that I heard. The full phrase that a lot of people don't know is a jack of all trades is a master of none, but oftentimes better than a master of one. Most people think it's just a jack of all trades is a master of none. I think it's great for, kids in general, just have a diverse sports, I guess, exposure, just to see what they like, man, because if you're not passionate about it, you're not going to be good at it.
Right.
At the end of the day.
Yeah.
So
I think your dad was very wise, though, because I was kind of in that boat where, not that I don't think I ever would have played anyone D1 college. I'm not that good at anything, but I did so many different things for so long that I kind of robbed Peter to pay Paul a little bit, right? And if I would have honed in on maybe 2 sports, I probably would have had a little bit more success in those 2 that I really enjoyed, as opposed to doing 5 or whatever, right? So I think your dad was really wise, and obviously it paid off for you. And I think that also kind of raises a caution to fathers today, is you were hinting at it, right? With all the technology and everything, it's just, there's so many things to bombard your kids with. You need to build some margin into their lives too, right? Too much of a good thing can be too much, right? And it can become a bad thing. So
yeah. I've started with sports with my kids. I mean, my oldest son is 5.5. We've had him in baseball. We've had him in soccer, but at this point, you just can't tell. And
yeah,
he's not a very motivated kid at sports. We put him out in center field in T-ball, and he picked clovers. I mean, that's what he did. And that's fine. That's fine. Like, he's 5. I don't care that much. He's a big Lego kid. He loves Legos. So he's 5. He's super smart. I don't know where it came from. It wasn't me, but we started buying him these Legos, and I'm sure y'all have too with your kids, that, they have an age range. There's a 3+, there's a 4+, there's a 5+. They even go to like 16+. I mean, like thousands of pieces. So he did the 3s, he did the 4s, and he was doing them in like 20 minutes. So we started, he's 5. Now we give him 13 to 14-year-old Legos, and he just nails them. And I'm not going to pressure him to play sports. Just because I played sports doesn't mean he have to. My dad was so good about that with me. And I saw it firsthand of the opposite side of the scale, where there were kids that were getting recruited in high school that I was playing these high school tournaments against, and there'd be 4 or 5 college coaches there watching them, and their dad was just on them constantly about every shot, the wind direction. I saw a kid get cussed out for missing a green in high school by these. And guess what? He went and signed a big scholarship deal, flamed out after 6 months because he just hated it, because it was for his dad. It was his dad. It wasn't him. He didn't love it.
Yeah.
So I was just really blessed with a dad that let me go at my own pace and really start running when I felt the need to.
That's such a beautiful example.
That's amazing. Yeah. Besides your dad, I guess my question would be who was the biggest mentor or like change in your life as a coach or just as a mentor in general, and why?
That's a great question, man. I mean, y'all all played sports, I'm sure, and you can probably remember a coach that had an impact on you growing up. I had 3. My granddad was my granddad more than my dad. My granddad was the head of wildlife and fisheries in Louisiana for 15 years. So when we lived in Baton Rouge, he taught me how to shoot, hunt, live in the woods, everything. You've seen Swamp People. He was about like those guys. So
that's awesome.
That's my mom's dad. And then I had 2 coaches. My high school coach was a former football player in college, and he's a speech teacher at my high school, and they needed a golf coach. He didn't know the first thing about golf, and he signed up to be the golf coach. Well, he treated us like his coaches in college football treated him. And what it was, I hated it at the time. It's horrible. We bear crawled the football field in 100-degree Texas heat, and we were running 2 miles 3 times a week for time. My senior year was 12:30 for 2 miles. And if I didn't make that time, I bear crawled the football field and back. Like it was just stuff that was no other golf team in the world was doing what we were doing. And I hated it at the time. But to this day, I'm 34 years old, and his name is Trampus Wilson. He's still down the street. He's won 4 state championships. He's finished second 4 times. He's probably one of the most legendary high school golf coaches in Texas. And at 20 years ago when I was in high school, that he hadn't done that yet. But now looking back, there's a reason why he won so much, and it was because he was hard on his players, but he loved them at the same time. And
Nice.
that's where the best coaches live.
Yep.
They're hard on you, but they love you at the same time. And then my college coach was similar. He wasn't as tough on us, but I've never been told I love you by a man more than my college golf coach. He was more of a, if you had a bad day, or I was the 5th score out of 5 and I expected better out of myself, he was more of a consoler and a steady voice in our lives. And he's won a national championship since. So I've been littered my entire life with incredible father figures. And so I feel as if the way I parent my kids is a mixture of everything that I've had.
That's so good. That's perfect, man. All right. So I do have another question, and this is something that comes from someone who comes from a competitive side of sports. So who is, like, I guess, your nemesis from golf, or like who is somebody that like you always chased, or like had a great relationship with, but like kind of didn't,
Yeah.
Like,
They one up you all the time.
Yeah. There's so many of them in golf because it's an individual sport, right? So
sure.
You got to beat 150 guys every week, right? But for me, it would probably have been Patrick Cantlay, my senior year at LSU. He was a freshman at UCLA, and he was number 1 in the country. And I think
I've heard of him.
4th or 5th. Yeah. And, obviously he's had a little more success since than I have, but back then we were neck and neck and back and forth, and we didn't always get along too well. But when we played with each other, it was a respectful hate. If that makes sense.
Makes perfect sense.
A respectful hate. So him, and then when I got to college, my whole college career, I had a roommate. His name was Andrew Loop, and he's when you say iron sharpens iron, and you say pressure causes diamonds in charcoal, like this is a perfect example of that. We came on campus at the same time, recruited in the same year, and we lived together for 3 years on the same team. And if I wasn't there first, he was there first. If I wasn't there last, he was there last, right? It was just one of those deals, and it lasted for 4 years, and then 2 years after college, both of us make the PGA Tour in the same graduating class. And it's only because of the two of us pushing each other for 4 years. That's the only reason that it happened. And there were a couple other occurrences like that, but those are the two off the top of my head that fit the mold the best.
Man, you've hit on so many things that we've kind of like touched on throughout doing our episodes about fatherhood, and also like why men need other men in their lives and stuff. And that little segment right there, it's such a great example of how genuine male friendships and father figures in people's lives make such a huge impact. So that's just really great to hear that, it wasn't the me show, it was all the people behind you show, kind of coming to the head there. But my question to you is, what is your, if you had one like nugget of wisdom for dads out there, what's the one thing, fatherhood according to John Peterson, if you could only give one tip?
Oh, that's hard, man.
If you want to think about it for a while, we can come back to it.
No, that's fine. I mean, I just think you have to parent your kids depending on who they are. I mean, I've got 4 of them, and not one of them is similar. That you go from the, nature versus nurture scenario, and all 4 of these kids in my house have the same upbringing, right? They will have the same upbringing, and I promise you, All 4 of them will be very different because that's just how they're born. And I have my daughter, I can't punish her like I can my son.
Mm-hmm.
And part of it's because she's my daughter, but she does way worse things than my son, but she's so sensitive to punishment that I can't spank her like I do my son. I spank my kids. Like, I'm sorry, it's biblical. I'll spare the rod, spoil the child.
do.
I spank my kids. And
That's it.
I have spanked my daughter. She's 4, and I felt so bad, dude. And for I felt bad. Like, and our relationship was weird for a few days afterwards. But I have no problem spanking my 2-year-old son, dude. I mean, he doesn't even wear clothes half the time. Like, I've been sitting here in this office and looked outside. He's running around the street naked. Like, I'm not spanking him for that, obviously, but he'll tip over trash cans. Like, they're raised in the same house, but they're completely different. So that's probably what I'd say, is that there's no perfect parenting method. There's just not. You have to treat every one of them differently. And my youngest is 9 months, and who knows how she'll be. She smiles a lot, but I guess my one tip would be adjust to the kid.
Yeah, I think that's good.
Yeah,
I like that a lot. Brandon, I think you had something to jump in with here.
Yeah, absolutely. So between your mentorship, from the different mentors you had, your sports, and just your experience in fatherhood, what are some general qualities that you think other dads should be equipped with that you think would be something that would help them grow as fathers?
Oh, it's general qualities, man. It's just patience. I think I do a horrible job with this one, because especially in professional sports and college sports, the way I've made my living most of my life is go, 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 and always keep going and pushing to be better and all this stuff. But I'm not sure if that's the right method to raise kids. I think patience is probably one of the things I struggle with the most with my children, probably because they're all so young and they're always drawing on the walls or breaking things. Or, my 2-year-old had a Sharpie out and just drew all over the entire house, like my wife's nice chairs and stuff. And I got so mad at it. And then I sit back, I'm like, dude, it doesn't matter. Like, we're still going to use the chairs. Like, I'm not going to buy new chairs. He's just 2. Like, he doesn't know any better. But I had no patience in the moment. I had no patience. And it's very hard to do sometimes because you see thousands of dollars of damage happening in front of you. So you want to just yell and scream and cuss and all this stuff. And it's hard for us as men to refrain from showing so much anger. And another thing, I keep bringing my dad up, but he just never yelled, dude. Never. Like, he didn't cuss and he didn't yell at my mom, at me, none of us. And I've already done that, and it's tough to do. So if I was just going to say one thing, it would be have some patience with your kids. I mean, I fail at it every day, but at least I'm trying to make an effort.
I think what you finished with there is the important thing too, that we try and say, because none of us here is perfect either, right? And there are way too many times in my own life where I was like, oof, I wish I could do that one over, especially when it comes to being a dad. And how you ended right there, it's the effort, right? Just incremental improvement. If it's something you struggle with, it's not going to just magically shift overnight, right? It's 0.5% every day for years, right? And then that makes that real change. But yeah, patience, and in those moments where they do something that's a real tough one. But Justin actually shared a little clip with us before the show, kind of on that topic about kind of reframing. Like, before you initially act, kind of think about it. If this is like, I think it was something to the effect of, this is the only moment you're ever going to get with your kid again, how do you want it to go? You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And it may be that little jolt of like, oof, okay, I need to take a deep breath or whatever. But I mean, you guys can chip in with this one. Your kids have that button that just hits you so much faster than anyone else, Well,
I think he hit that on the head, because the one guy that everybody remembers and that has that it factor is always the one who's calm, cool, and collected in the most crazy situations, in the most wild, just time in life, they're just like, okay.
They're the lighthouse in the storm.
Yeah, exactly. They're always consistent. They're always calm. They're always collected. That's hard to be. George, you and I, we fall on that same page, and I have a feeling, and John does as well. But like, we get a little emotional sometimes. It's like, oh, but like at the end of the day, you got to stop and
I prefer the word passionate. Okay.
Passionate. Yeah.
Very passionate.
Whatever. You know what I mean? I'm just saying, like, it's hard not to be passionate about things, especially when you work hard for things or you do things. And like, your kid's got a Sharpie and he's hitting a $3,000 sofa. You're like, oh my God, like, what are you doing? But then you got to stop and remember there too, and
right, show of hands. How many, who's had a sofa die to the kids or like your kids' friends?
Not yet, but I'm just gonna put it up there.
Everyone almost. Yeah. I've got two, so I make it up for you.
Yeah. Dustin, I think you had something next.
Yeah, it's amazing. So my son's 3. If I've raised my voice a couple times, not proud of it. I try not to, but it does happen. And when I have, it scares the crap out of him because it's so rare. And, he does something bad and I yell, hey, don't do that. And then he's so scared. He has no idea what he did wrong. He doesn't learn anything from it. So I grab him and I say, hey, buddy, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to yell at you. What'd you learn from that? I have no idea. I'm just terrified. Okay, that didn't work.
You're 6'4", 220, daddy.
Right, yeah, exactly. Don't yell at me. And so then same situation. He does something he shouldn't do. And I'm calm. And I say, hey, buddy, can you not do that? And then I grab him and I go, hey, what'd you do wrong? And he knows exactly what happened. So once it gets into that fear center, he's not going to learn anything. But if I'm able to maintain that sense of calm, which I can mostly do, he learns and it's a win-win. So I know for me, if I can maintain that frame, as you said, George, that's a huge win. So John, question for you, for your 4 kids, let's say they're 25, 30 years old. Do you have any kind of long-term goals where you go, all right, I would be very satisfied if I know that my kids did this? Does it matter if they have a job, that they're married, any of that kind of, do you have any kind of long-term stuff you think about like that?
I do. That's a great question. Yesterday, I went down and watched LSU play in the Aggie Invitational in College Station. And the coach that recruited me that I just mentioned is still the coach there. So we don't think he's going to coach much longer. He's done it forever down there. He's done a great job. But I wanted to see him. I wanted to see his team. So I went down there and watched. And while I was watching a kid by the name of Nick Arcemont, plays for LSU. He's down there. He's from Lake Charles. And his mom, Kim, was there. And I got to walk with her for a little while. And we got to talking. And she drives to pretty much every one of his tournaments. Could be 2 hours, could be 20 hours to watch him play. And I was like, man, that's crazy to drive that far just to watch a kid play golf. But then I got to thinking about it. I was like, how cool is it for you to watch your 20-year-old son play for LSU, one of the premier sports universities in the country, at the highest level of college golf? Like, that has to be the coolest feeling for a parent, to watch their child play at the highest level that they can, like against the best in the country. And then I got to put myself in her shoes. It's like, I would probably be driving 20 hours too. Like, so you asked about long-term goals for my children. I want one of them to play something in college. I will drive across the country to every event. Like, I don't care if it's water polo. Like, I will be there. So
that's a tough sport.
That was a great question because I literally thought about it yesterday, and how cool it must be to watch your child play a college sport. And that's my goal for them, my selfish goal for them.
I'll bet you got 4 chances. I'll bet you'll get one of them. That's nothing. Yeah. So I got the chance to meet Tom Brady a couple weeks ago at his retirement event. And they asked him, you're retiring, what are you going to do? And he laughed and he said, I dragged my kids to my games for 10 years. Now it's my turn to go sit my butt down in that seat and watch them play. So that's what he's most excited about retirement with. So yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. I just can't imagine, I'm trying to put myself in Miss Kim's shoes. It'd be a dream, really. I mean, I got more and more thinking about it on the way home, and it wouldn't matter what the sport was. I do not care. I just want to watch him play a college sport. And we know we're watching him play soccer and baseball right now around here, but it really doesn't mean much until you get to at least high school sports. So That's my selfish dream for them. Yeah.
So which of the four do you think it's going to be?
It's going to be my 2-year-old, the kid that writes on the wall.
The one flipping trash cans.
Yeah. It's not going to be Luke, my 5-year-old. I mean, he's going to be very successful.
He's going to build the next like space station or something, right?
He will be fine. But my 2-year-old just has that. He has that killer instinct. He knows he can read the room already, and he gives me like these sly looks out of the corner of his face when he does something, and he's just got that spunk about him, and that mentality that athletes have, and I could see it at 2 years old. You know, and maybe my 4-year-old daughter too. She's a little bit like him. I probably got 1 or 2 chances. We'll see how it pans out.
Awesome. Now you're officially retired from golf, correct?
That's right.
Are there anything aspiration wise that you're looking to in the future for yourself?
Yeah, not with golf. No, nothing related to golf. I love golf. I still play a little bit here and there. I'll give private lessons every now and then. But I've had, like I mentioned, I've had 2 wrist surgeries. Neither one of my wrists can take the beating anymore.
Right.
So I'm working on my commercial pilot certificate, which requires 250 hours and then a check ride with the FAA and a written exam. So I've done my private pilot, I've done my instrument rating, and the next step, if you want to do it for a living, is the commercial check ride. So I've got about 50 or 60 hours to go before I'm at 250, and then I'll be commercially rated. And at that point, I'll get a multi-engine rating and step up into bigger, more capable airplanes like King Airs and stuff like that. And yeah, I want to fly charter planes. It's the first and only thing that I've found that gets my adrenaline going like high-level professional golf did. And airplanes, aviation, you're never going to be perfect. There's no such thing as perfection in aviation. There's no such thing as perfection in golf. You cannot be perfect. They're very similar in the fact that you never stop learning.
It's really interesting. I had never even considered that, but it makes a lot of sense to me.
Fighting with people,
and I can see why, like,
adrenaline rush. So that's always
right.
Good.
What now?
Fighting with people on Twitter is also an adrenaline rush.
Oh yeah, for sure. That's the pinnacle. Actually, there's no higher adrenaline rush than that. So.
It doesn't pay as good though.
Yeah, it does not pay as good. I think Justin, you had something. Go ahead, brother.
Yeah, man. I guess I never really heard the story behind your wrist. Like what happened? And just because I was in sports medicine and ORs before I do what I do now, and I'm just genuinely curious. Like, what is it that happened that messed up your wrists?
Well, it's mostly wear and tear. There was not a specific instance that tore something or broke something, or I felt, oh, that hurt, like something's wrong. What had happened was the first time I had a carpal boss is what their technical term was. And it was right up here on the top of my hand. It was in 2015 was the first one. And I was in the middle of my best season on the PGA Tour. It was May. Yeah, it was May. We start the season in September. Okay. From September to May, I had only missed 1 cut on the PGA Tour. And I had like 7 top 20s. I hadn't won, but I was like 30th in the FedEx Cup, just already kept my card for the next year in the middle of a great season. All of a sudden, this left wrist started killing me. It wasn't a specific instance. Like I said, it just got progressively worse over about 2 weeks. You know, I've been hitting 400 or 500 balls, you know, every other day, just like you have to do to stay sharp on the PGA Tour, doing what I'd always done. And I got to the Memorial up in Columbus, Ohio, Jack's tournament, and I was playing with Kevin Kisner and David Lingmerth Thursday, Friday, and played on Thursday. Didn't play very good because my wrist was killing me. Friday, I was like, screw it. I'm going to take 10 Advil, see what happens. Because I'd been taking like 6 and it wasn't enough. So I took 10. Didn't feel my wrist. Turned in 5 under on the front 9. And I think 2 under on the shot, 7 under, and still missed the cut by 1. And I figured at that point, it was super unhealthy for me to take 10 Advil. I got to do something about it. So the carpal boss happened in 15. 3 years later, I tore 2 ligaments in the bottom portion of my right wrist. Had surgery on that. That didn't work. I actually had stem cells after the surgery that fixed it, and I don't have any pain anymore. The guy that did it said it's like 50-50 shot it'll work. It was a super awkward procedure. I don't know if y'all know anything about stem cells, but basically they liposuction fat out of my ass, went and spun it down like with a bike pump and brought it back. And this like nurse came in here and shot it in my wrist and all 4, quadrants of my hand. And 6 months later, I felt fine. So yeah, that's pretty much the extent of my injuries.
I'm still trying to wrap my head around the fact that your butt is in your wrist now.
Exactly, and
he got a handful.
I had like I had like a little dent. I had a dent from where they like sucked the fat out of my ass for like 6 months. It
Little divot.
Yeah, that's amazing. All right, so I did have one more follow-up question. So, favorite course and what's the best you ever shot?
My favorite course is the honors course in Chattanooga, Tennessee. My lowest round on a PGA Tour sanctioned event, 63. No, hold on, I got the ball right here. I don't remember what it was. 62 was my lowest round on the tour.
My God,
pretty good.
What?
But
pretty good.
I've shot a few 60s, 61s.
It's a joke, Justin.
But yeah, no, that's a sweet track up there, the honors course in Chattanooga. They don't allow pros. They don't allow pro tournaments. We played the national championship there my junior year at LSU, and I haven't been back since. I've only been there once, but probably because they don't allow pros. But it's one of those places where, trying to describe this to you the best way I can for people that listen to this podcast to kind of get a mental image of it. Just imagine like a country back road with a bunch of woods. All right. And then you got a farm gate that's 15 foot on either side, and it opens and closes. Right. There's just a key lock with a chain in the middle of it. And this is a gravel road. If you don't know that's where the honors course is, you'll drive right by it. But they open this farm gate up. You go about 500 yards through these woods, and it opens up into this massive golf mecca. And it is perfect. It looks like Augusta National hidden by a forest.
Wow.
Yeah.
Chattanooga is really beautiful too. That part of the country is amazing.
Yeah.
I'm a little biased. I live in Tennessee. But,
now I've got to go play there. Like, I'm freaking out. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll go watch you play. I'll drive the cart for you.
There you go.
That's awesome. So John, I had a question for you, and that is if you have any questions for us about dad stuff.
Okay.
I don't know. I was just trying to mix it around.
I mean, you asked me what my goals for my kids are.
It's good.
Like, that's my selfish goals. George, what are your most selfish goals for your daughter?
Selfish goals. Kind of like you, I don't want nothing in particular. I just want her to find something that she's very passionate about and compete at a high level or perform whatever it could be music, could be whatever it is. But just because I was a very competitive person growing up, Junior Olympics and stuff for some different sports, and having that experience, I think, really helped me later in life too. Right? It's not just the moment of it. So I kind of want her to have that experience. So when she's an adult, she's been tested a little bit. She knows she's done something and can kind of have that self-confidence to just handle whatever life's thrown at her. But then I guess a little bit more selfishly too, I hope she finds a great guy who's worthy of, being my son-in-law one day and hopefully have some grandkids.
Yeah. Don't you think that word you use, tested, is such an important word when you're young?
Absolutely.
I do feel as if you have to be tested in every phase of your life, or you'll just go stagnant.
Yeah,
that'll be it.
Yeah, and I think that's universal too with kids, regardless if they're boy or girl. I think it changes as when we become men. I think it's a little bit different than women, but we're gonna get ultra canceled tonight. But I think kids need to be pushed, challenged. Adversity is a good thing, right? And that's why we talked about this before. Sports is such a beautiful environment for that because no one's gonna die. Unless you're doing something super crazy, but in general, it's a very healthy way to learn adversity, a very healthy way to learn the pain of losing, working really hard and it not working out, right? Like that happens in life all the time. So it's kind of a controlled environment for kids to grapple with these, very real emotions and things like that. So yeah, Dustin said, unless you're a female MMA fighter pitted against a man, but yeah, so that's kind of my that'd be my selfish is a little bit similar to yours, but I just want her to have that one thing that she's genuinely passionate about, that she finds and just really pushes, to the best of her ability and compete a little bit, because I think that's kind of something that she'll be able to take with her whatever she does for the rest of her life, and it'll kind of give her that strong foundation to weather the storm, so to speak.
Yeah, that's so important, especially growing up. The learning how to lose is a lot more important than learning how to win, and you become a winner by losing. That's just how it works.
100%.
There's no person in this world that's ever accomplished anything winning every time. It just doesn't happen.
Man, you literally stole the words I was going to say. If I could answer that for my son, Bennett, obviously I would love for him to be the next Aaron Judge or, a golf pro like yourself. But I want my son to know failure, embrace it, and love it.
Right.
Because failure teaches you so much in life. And if you can accept failure and you can take failure and learn from it, you can do anything in this world. 100%. And I'm a true believer in that. And so I want my son to know failure and then learn to succeed from it. I feel like that's one of the greatest things that I could teach him, is just like, don't let things keep you down. Just keep your head up, keep your chin up, and just keep going after it, and don't quit. It's like Rocky said in that, I don't know which one it was, but he was like, you get hit, you got to keep getting up. You got to keep getting up, that's how life is. It's not fair. It's not easy. I mean, this is a great podcast for that. This exact episode says that life isn't fair and there's crazy stuff going on in this world. So adapt, overcome, fail a lot and often, and then learn from it. So I think that's what I would want for my son currently.
So go around the horn, Dustin.
Yeah, absolutely. I did it. Brandon, you got me on it. I made it all last episode, did not say yeah absolutely once, and I did it this time. I want my son to have great lifelong friends. I think that is such an important thing that men need. And isolation is increasingly problematic for American boys. It seems like we all get into activities that don't involve community like it used to. And so I just see so many isolated and by extension, sad, unhappy boys, especially. Women, I don't know, they seem to have figured it out better. They tend to do a little bit better job with community, having friends. But American boys, American men, especially if they're not into, physical sports, don't have something like 70% of men can't tell you, who's your friend. I don't really have one. I've got acquaintances, but I don't have like a good friend that I can talk to.
Is it really 70%?
It's really high. Yeah.
That's
it might
actually
be more like 60, but it's
really alarming.
Yeah. It's well, you wonder where these school shootings are coming from and all that kind of stuff. It's it's isolation. I mean, none of these kids who shot up schools had friends or had connections. They were all just isolated kids. And so I hope my son has good friends like I have you guys. I mean, I'll tell you what, the past year, doing this with you guys has been such a positive impact on me. I've had someone, you've heard, I've had some challenges, with all kinds of things, and you've been there to listen and to, give guidance, and that is everything. So that's what I hope for my son, is that he's got friends as good as you guys.
Mostly I just tell you to put the cookie down.
Put the cookie down now.
All right, Brandon.
Man, I have a lot of things that I have goals for my children, mostly just because I have short-term, mid-range, and long-term goals, right? One of the main things is I just want to create a ton of core memories with them. And when I say core memories, I mean memories that they'll look back, they'll smile, and they'll have it to say, man, I had such a great childhood, and my parents were always just so supportive and loving. And, another thing that I want them to do is I want to create emotional intelligence in my children. So, to help break any kind of thing that my wife and I might do. Like, if I'm dysregulated at all and I scream or I get impatient or I do something, I want, first of all, I apologize, but I want them to be able to regulate themselves where they don't have to do that in the future. They don't have to learn how I did late in the game. And so that and learning how to learn, because I think in college for me, I really got in depth on like philosophy and all these different classes and courses. And I didn't really know how to learn until I got in college and was actually challenged. And I want my kids to know that beforehand so that when they go anywhere, they just adapt. Like you said, they fail and they learn and then they adapt. And so the learning part is really important for me. So I would say that. Obviously marriage for both my children. I pray that. I pray that God prepares their future wife and husband. I'd love to see them graduate from schools, prestigious schools, and have careers that they enjoy. But yeah, I think those are the main kind of things outside of just knowing Christ. I really want my children to have that hope. But yeah, those are my main goals.
A prestigious school like the University of North Carolina, for example, Brandon.
Ole Miss. Yeah, no.
All right.
The Harvard of the South, baby.
That's right.
That's what I'm talking about.
All right. Oh, actually, that's a good segue, John. Favorite pro team? What's your any sport? Whichever one is your go-to?
My favorite pro team?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's got to be the Rangers. Texas Rangers.
Okay.
Nice. Yeah.
I guess Fort Worth, you're able to go to games pretty easily, right?
Through thick and thin. I mean, they're terrible, but they've got a brand
new
stadium
better.
to go to. Yeah. Jacob deGrom. I mean, we'll see.
I was going to say, you got deGrom. That's a great start.
Yeah. Yeah, they've been bad for a few years. Ever since Josh Hamilton and those glory days, we hadn't been great. But, yeah, probably just the Rangers. I mean, I'm not a Cowboys fan. I'm more of a Saints fan than a Cowboys fan. Living here, that doesn't go over very well. But
yeah, we're all Cowboys fans. My wife's a Saints fan, so it's all good.
Well, I was about to say being a Cowboys fan just doesn't go over well, period. It's been, what, 23 years, 24 years? So
where's Aaron Rodgers now, George?
Still got more rings than anyone who's been on the Cowboys in the last 2 decades.
It's our year next year. It's our year.
This is our year, baby. I've been hearing that for 20 years. All right. Well, hey, everyone, you can go find John on his own podcast called For the People, FORE, For the People. John, tell us a little bit about your podcast. You just talk about whatever, right? All over the place, or?
Yeah. See, right when I came on with y'all, like, I got a DM, it's like, hey, 20 minutes before, like meet and greet situation deal on this. And I was like, that's in my head. I'm like, that's stupid. Like, we've never done that. Like, why would I ever do that? And I got on with y'all. I'm like, I totally understand why you do it. Like, y'all know me from Adam. It's a great idea. So, like, I learned more in the last hour coming on y'all's podcast to do mine. But yeah, we don't.
We're here for you
seriously at all. Like, we literally grab a 6-pack of beer and we'll sit here and talk about whatever for an hour. We get sideways too. I mean, we get way off topic.
I love it.
And it's mostly we've had. All right, so I need to backtrack. We basically get guys on the PGA Tour and the Live Tour that you would want to sit and have a beer with after you finish your round of golf.
Gotcha.
So we're not looking for the stiff guys that are giving you the politically correct answers.
Right.
We're looking for guys that we know that will have a good time and shoot you straight. Examples, we've had Kevin Kisner, Harry Higgs, Joel Damon, Pat Perez, Smiley Kaufman. We've had 100 episodes. There's been a bunch of them, but
nice.
Paige Spiranek a few weeks ago. We do an all right job. We're not as expert as y'all are, obviously.
we try to be somewhat professional, but every now and then.
You're whipping our ass, I'll tell you right now.
Well, maybe.
2 strokes under.
All right, well, for all our listeners, go ahead and check out For the People. I'm going to go check out some more of it myself. Sounds like it'll be a good time. John, thanks for your time tonight. Go tell your wife a thanks for us for lending you while it's bedtime and having to put away the whole little army out there to bed. And just appreciate you coming on, and hopefully we never have to talk about the whole trans and sports thing again. But I really appreciate just the genuine conversation about fatherhood, and it's those things like that. I think all dads are looking for that, right? Just to hear a little bit about it from someone else, and like, that is awesome. And so that's why we do what we do, and appreciate your time tonight. Any final closing thoughts from you guys? Around the horn? No, good to go.
Yeah, no, I just want to say thanks, man. I appreciate you coming on, and my final thoughts for the night is we don't like Oregon, and go Tigers.
At least I went to the school that I'm wearing on my chest. So with that, we'll close. And ladies and gentlemen, we
my
will
wife
see
got
you.
3 degrees from her, so
We will see you. Well, we're not talking about your wife. We're talking about the Present Fathers podcast.
Hey, they're
so,
also my largest client, son. Back
all
up.
right. Fair enough. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll see you in about 2 weeks for our next episode. John, thank you so much, brother. Have a great night. See you around.
Yeah, you bet. Thank y'all.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of the Present Fathers Podcast. Make sure that you subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow us on Spotify to catch all of our amazing episodes. We will see you in the next one.